I researched the issue, did a little background stuff, and I found a solution for you. I'm going to do a little bit of background stuff here first, and we'll get to that in just a second. And I also have a spray demonstration for you as well. So, what do we got going on this week? This is sort of deck week, give or take. I'm taking the, what I call deck week is really into about 2.5 weeks of decks, small projects, other kind of miscellaneous things that aren't full exterior repaints. So we've broken up into 3 or 4 crews. I have 1 wash crew just out there making sure jobs are prepped and ready to go, and 2 or 3 crews coming right behind them doing the finishing behind there. And when you do a bunch of small jobs and things like this, I basically run around in circles and make sure that the homeowners are good with color, and then drop off supplies at every one of the job sites and get everybody going. So the schematics of where my team goes on what days and stuff is always fun to work out. It's like a little war game every morning trying to figure out the logistics of the day. So what else do we have going on here? I got a couple master's classes coming up. One is at the Craftsmanship Forum, the PDCA Craftsmanship Forum, the Painting and Decorating Contractors of America. Every year they have one large expo. It's the annual gathering of all the members, the board, everybody else, vendors, things like that. It's a heck of a good time. They have a couple different forums, more specific forums besides the main expo. There's residential, commercial, craftsmanship, this and that here and there. And so if you want to drill down on residential painting, if you want to drill down on the craftsmanship side, you can travel to different areas around, and there's mini expos for that. This fall there is a craftsmanship forum in Illinois, and I will be giving my master's class titled The Perfect Kitchen, where I walk through a scientific approach, time-lapse video, GoPro footage, my recaps of conversations with chemists, bioscientists, things like that, all about coating science and how to take a set of varnished or lacquered cabinets, turn it into painted cabinets with ease and with the highest degree of efficiency and quality. So that's sort of the there. And I also, and depending on which group wants me, I also break down what I make on the jobs and things like that, just to show you that you can make a living by doing the finest work out there. So, all right, let's get to some other good stuff here. Oh, I should mention too that as of now, I'm slated to give a brand new master's class at the PDCA National Expo this winter. And as of right now, it'll be based on new construction. So new construction has a very bad name in the painter's world. It's either you do multi-million-dollar superfine finishes, or you're the lowest scum on earth. And there doesn't seem to be a lot of middle ground. I have made a place for myself in this world by being in that middle ground. We're talking move-up houses, large custom homes, things like that, where you're doing the finest work possible, but you're doing it on a production scale to keep your general contractors happy. And also, speaking of general contractors too, there's been a lot of interesting stuff going on. The PDCA is having roundtable phone calls where, depending on what certain size of business you are, you can get on conference calls with other businesses of your size and discuss issues that's going on right now. As well as there's a webinar and a podcast this week, the Paint Ed podcast, and there was a webinar with Gina Court where she talked about her large commercial painting business working with general contractors. So a lot of this stuff, there's a lot of that information going around this week. Check the PDCA's Facebook page or contact Chris Shank, who I see is watching down there. He's the education guy at the PDCA. He can line you up with that. So, all right, a little bit of background information. I have always hand finished a lot of my new construction stuff, but in order to appease some general contractors, I've done a lot of experiments with keeping quality as high as you possibly can, but being super efficient with that. And one of it has to do with people management, getting your apprentices skilled, giving them the knowledge, and then getting them to work at a pace that keeps your general contractor happy. The other part of it is coating science and technology, dealing with a lot of the stuff I used to hand finish. I've been doing a lot of experiments with spraying and still trying to maintain the high quality. The biggest problem I've run into is in my neck of the woods here. You get a lot of flat walls, flat ceilings, and it doesn't leave any room for error as far as defects, things like that. And anybody who's done new construction knows that the state of new drywall nowadays is absolutely horrendous. I spend more time in a brand new house with brand new drywall patching defects in it than I do a house that's 10 or 15 years old. So You know, it's one of those things where I talk to the general contractors about it, and they just say, listen, man, it is what it is. We only can get so much out of these people. Kind of sad, you know, for somebody who's devoted their life to furthering their craft, that it is what it is with that kind of thing. But one of the biggest problems I was running into with spraying is, you know, you start off with just a gun in your hand, and pretty soon you find out that you're moving a lot like this, you're up on ladders, you don't have that much of a reach, so you start putting on an extension. Get yourself one of these, and then, you know, from the floor you can do walls, ceilings, closets, everything else, but pretty soon you'll find out that you're leaving spits and kind of drips and stuff coming from the gun. It's when you add an extension onto a spray handle, you're not getting the fine finish that you're getting from a gun, and the reason is that there's a needle and a seat in here that stops the paint from going out in the gun. When you add this, the needle and seat is still back here, but there's still paint in here. So when you release the pressure, you make a pass on a wall, you trigger it and release. When you release, the paint will stop here, but there's still residual pressure in here, and that's where it spits out just a tiny little bit onto the wall like that. So I did a little research. Immediately I go to the internet, and nowadays with YouTube and Facebook and everything else, you pretty soon find out that you're not the only guy experiencing these problems, and there is a solution. And I apologize, guys, I'm out on my farm today, and the wind just picked up just in time for a Ask a Painter Live, so you're probably getting a little wind noise in here. But this is the solution. My friendly Graco rep dropped this off the other day. This is a clean shot shutoff valve. In layman's terms, this basically takes the needle and seat here, puts it in a valve form, a modular form, and you attach it to the end of your spray extension, so that when you trigger, when you release your trigger like this, it keeps all the paint back here at bay. Now this works on pressure. You got to have at least 1,000 psi in there. And here is one like this. Spray extension goes in here. You can attach this to a regular gun. There's really no reason, because you have a needle and seat here. You'd just be attaching another needle and seat. Where you really see the benefits of this is anybody who used a spray extension more than a foot or two, you realize you can sometimes leave some pretty big spits and stuff at the end, especially when you're doing some specific industrial coatings, things like that. I do a lot of pole sheds, agricultural buildings here, and basically for days on end, you know, you got the back brace, you got the fall arresting harness on, you're in a lift, you're spraying, and you're basically just going as far as you can like this, and you have to take the trigger off, otherwise you're building up too much of this industrial finish on the top and the bottom of the stroke, so you have to trigger every time. The problem with that is you're leaving spits on these industrial finishes, and a lot of these farmers care a great deal about their buildings out there, so they're out there inspecting them, and they don't want drips and runs and spits and uneven finish. So that's basically, you attach this guy to the end of your spray extension. There is also this one from Graco has a swivel on it too. So instead of adding this then a swivel, it all comes in a package here. Put this guy on the end of your spray extension, and you basically have an adjustment here. When you dial it all the way in, that's in spray mode. You can also back it off too, depending on your coating and what pressure you're running at. When you back this all the way up, you're basically manually moving that needle back, and this will allow you to flush the gun, so you're not worried about it holding paint back in here in the extension. So right now, and you can see they even have it etched in there, spray versus flush. Right now this is in flush mode right here, and you basically just dial it in like this. I've had pretty good use, pretty good results with this stuff. The coating can make this change the adjustment a little bit, but basically if you put it all the way in and then start backing it up until you get a perfect spray, it eliminates that little bit of spit. So if I can get my substrate here to stay down, I'll do a quick demonstration for you. Put on this guy real quick. All right, we'll position this guy on here quick, and I'll give you guys some close-ups here in a second. Okay, so basically this, we have the tried and true sort of super old Graco gun. This is one of my favorite Graco sprayers. It's been in the trade as long as I have, 24 years. It's got some oil primer chalked up in it here. And this is my go-to oil primer gun. Standard extension. I do a lot of new residential houses with this stuff. And I got my tip chalked up. All right, bring this guy down here for you. Now, as you can see, good spray pattern, dialed in, but you get a little bit of spit right at the end there. And you can see it, it's pronounced down there too. So, I'll show you the next rig here with the clean shot valve on it. Okay, for this one too, I thought I would show you one of the handy new construction rig. Basically, this is an inline spray handle here. It's got a long extension and a much more rigid, much more kind of burly extension on here. These little extensions here, I usually like the smaller forms of them. It's easier on your hands, give you more control. It's lighter at the tip, so you can move it around for trim and stuff like that. But if you're doing drywall, walls, ceilings, things like that, these are much more sturdy. And what the benefit is you can basically keep this at your hip, and you basically move. You know, think of a roller extension pole. A lot of times when you're rolling the walls, you sort of seat that pole at your waist, and you're basically just articulating it with your hand like this. It's the same thing here. It keeps the end light. And yeah, and anybody who's had a couple of these, especially when they get out to 2 or 3 feet, rolling around at the back of the truck, they get bent up. And anyone that you've seen rolling around for more than a few years, you see it's got a little bit of that English on it, a little bit of curve to it. So with this one, it'll stand up to a lot more of that stuff. So for this particular coating, again, we have a primer chalked up here. I have my tip, I have my my clean shot valve attached. We got the inline here. And for this particular one, I have it seated, the valve all the way in, just seated out a little bit farther. With my experiments with this coating, that seemed to be what it was. So I'll do a quick fan here for you. All right. So you can see here, let's see if we can get that. Flip this guy around here. All right, so if you can see that, a much more even finish on the end of that spray pattern, you know, versus the oil primer where you get a few of the spits here and there. So when you trigger it, nice even pattern, you can blend it to the last part of it like that. And that simple thing, all you basically do is attach it to the end of your pole, dial it in, and there you go. So I want some questions from you pros today. Juliano, let's see, I'll go back to the top here, scroll through. Anybody watching here, let's get some more questions going here. Anything you guys want to talk about. We don't necessarily have to talk about the spraying or anything like that. If you want to talk business, if you want to talk just basic coating science, we can do that too. Oh, Chris Shank, thank you for watching, even if you're made to. I do appreciate it. Jeremy Bramlett, nice, thank you, sir. Jeremy, let me know if you're a professional painter. Let's have a question here. Juliano Alcantara, my good friend from Brazil. Thank you so much for watching and spreading the word down there. I do appreciate it. Christine, I can't, because it's set back to me. This is awesome. Thanks for the close-ups. I appreciate it. I really couldn't see it when I was doing the close-ups, so let me know if you guys want to see any more, or if that sufficed. Juliano, God, I wish I spoke Portuguese. You might be asking what kind of sprayer. I see Titan in the next one. I use everything and anything under the sun. Some of my favorite equipment is over 20 years old. The gun that this is attached to, I bought used from a really good painter who retired, and wallpaper hanger, and it's been in service for 24 years. And basically, you know, you just clean out the filters, clean it out, keep thinner in it, and it's just dialed in so perfectly for oil primer. I use it for all my cabinet jobs, trim, everything else. It's just whatever whatever's going on in that machine, it's just magic. No adjustments, no troubles. It's like an old, you know, 82 Chevy pickup truck. Always starts, always runs. It's not going to do anything fancy, but it's just there, and you can always rely on it. The other one, my fancy here, oh, you might be asking tips too. I use a combination of everything. For a lot of my interior finishes, I use a lot of the Titan switch tips. Gracos make a lot of the awesome fine finish low pressure ones now. The way I could show you the biggest difference in the clean shot valve today, I've noticed in these tips here. So I wanted to sort of exaggerate it a bit just so you can see it, because with a lot of the fine finish low pressure, for whatever reason, maybe smaller orifices, I don't get a lot of it. It's still there, but I just wanted to make sure I showed you guys what it was. But yeah, the machine that this guy is attached to back there is the first new sprayer I ever bought. I'm thinking, let's see, 8 years ago maybe, a Titan 440 from my local Sherwin-Williams. So yeah, it's been a great machine as well. And again, you know, I've never had to do any repairs to any of my spray equipment over the years. You know, it's always just been clean it out really well, be anal retentive about the cleaning, and they've always performed. Never had a single problem with them. So Carlos Ferreira from Brazil, Santa Catalina, thank you so much, or Santa Catarina, thank you for watching. Christine O'Connell, it looked good. Good. Well, everybody, it's Friday, and if there's no more questions here, oh, Sean Davis. Sean, tell me a little bit about yourself. You're asking about sprayers for beginners. You're a professional painter, you're a homeowner that wants to do stuff. If you do, what do you spray mostly? You do inside, outside? Are you spraying water-based, hybrids, oils, things like that? Juliano, you have the double Titan. That's awesome. It's been really fun watching you. Juliano, you did this really awesome house. It was a blue house, or maybe it was wood, but you turned it, it was a wood house. You completely spray primed the thing and turned it white. That was a really fun project to watch down there. So Todd, I have the new Todd Hill. Thanks for watching, by the way, Todd, a frequent watcher, and I love following your hunting stuff out there too. So the new FFLP spray tips and the new Emerald paint flawlessly at 56 a gallon. I won't be using it much. Yeah, you know, I understand the concern about price, but you know, one thing I said, Todd, and I've always told my reps, is that if you can get me, Benjamin Moore and Sherwin-Williams, if you guys can get me a paint that's $400 a gallon, but last 20 years on the outside of a house, I couldn't buy enough of this stuff, and it would be money in the bank. It would be good for the homeowner, good for me. So price, always an issue, but especially when you're dealing with, you know, the interior finishes, I don't know. I usually just say, you know, whatever gives the best finish, and for me, usually it's a lot of labor. But I certainly understand, you know, as business owners, we got to keep an eye on that. So, Jeremy Bramlett, you're welcome, my friend. Sebastian from Mexico, wonderful. Let's see. Let's go back to Sean. Sean, I haven't seen your reply yet. I know there's a lag in this, but a good sprayer for beginners. I will tell you what. I started my business 10 years ago. I maybe have sprayed once before that in all my years before that. The painting company that I grew up in is a very regressive painting company. There was no constant improvement, a sort of trait that I circle my life around nowadays. And we basically did everything the same from when I was a 10-year-old boy to when I was a 25-year-old man. Everything was done the same with the same stuff, no improvement. As soon as I started my own company, I finally realized that, well, the thing that got me into spraying was a lot of people were asking for sprayed cabinetry and millwork, and I'd never done it before. And enough people asked where I was actually losing out on jobs because I would hand finish everything. So I basically just called my Sherwin-Williams rep. I said, hey man, I got a spray. What do you got for me? I don't want a tiny little tinfoil machine. I obviously don't need one of those ones on wheels with the huge, on the stand that you can run 3-4 guns off of, but give me something. And obviously the professional entry level, you're going to be looking at the Graco, the 390. I think this one up here, this 24-year-old Graco, is a 395 STS. I think all the beginner sort of, you know, what I would consider entry-level professional machines, I think they're 390s now. Titan 440s are always great as well. They do about the same thing, and honestly, I wish you know, it's like a Chevy or Ford thing. It's like, I have everything. I have Wagner's, the professional style, the cap sprays, HVLP stuff. I have Titans, I have Gracos, and honestly, they're all awesome. I have one Titan, one Graco that's at least, well, that other one's 24 years old. I have a Titan that's 20 years old, a 440. I have a brand new Titan. I have a brand new Ferrari finishing machine, an air-assisted airless Graco, and honestly, I just haven't had any problems with any of them. They're awesome pieces of machinery. You know, you're probably going to lay out $1,000 unless you can really lean on your paint rep, but it's money well spent, because, you know, 8 years ago I bought my first new machine. $1,000. All I've done is clean out the filters, put some finish in it, or thinner in it, keep it good, and it's basically been a workhorse. I've done dry fall, I've done industrial finishes, I've done clears. I converted one of my Titans now to just spraying oil varnish. I've done everything. Things that I say, hey, I got a car dealership coming up. I'm going to be spraying, 200 gallons of dry fall, and they're like, ooh, don't put that through a 440. It did perfect. Like, yes, it's a little undersized. You probably should have a bigger one, but I did that 8 years ago. It worked perfectly. Hasn't had a hiccup since, 8 years later. A whole bunch of crazy industrial finishes. Haven't done epoxy through it yet. If I did, I would have a dedicated machine. But if you're looking for the entry-level professional stuff, just look at the Graco 390s in the 390 series and the Titan 440s, and you can't go wrong. They're just like the workhorses of the industry. They're the Chevy Silverado, the Ford F-150, the Dodge Ram. I mean, they're just the workhorses of the industry. So, Sean, if you do make a decision, let me know, though. I'm always curious. It brings me back to my good old days of sitting in my shop trying to figure out how the hell I'm going to paint all these cabinets and get a good finish. So, all right, let's see what else we got going on here. Chad, good to see you as well. Okay, Sean, interior mostly, residential and commercial repaints. Honestly, I do, people say sometimes the entry-level Gracos and the Titans might be a little rough for fine finishing, but honestly, I spray all my oil primer with a 24-year-old pump, and I get the most beautiful fine finishes you can get out of there. And like I said, I converted, there was this old seized-up Titan, at least 20 years old, sitting in somebody's garage, gave it to me. It still had thinner in it, didn't really work that well. Hit the valve with a hammer, loosened it up, and started working again. So I cleaned it out real well, oiled it up, and it's still been working ever since, and now I run my oil varnish through it. And it gets the most beautiful fine finishes. You use some fine finishing tips, super small orifices, dial that pressure right in, and you get these beautiful finishes out of it. So I hope that helps a lot. Sean, thanks for your answer in time. Love your show. Anytime, man. I do appreciate it, and you've helped a lot. Well, and let me know if there was another way that I helped you out. I'd be curious to, because sometimes it feels like I'm talking into the universe out here sometimes. So, Mark Johnson, thank you very much. That was interesting. Good show. Yeah, no problem. Always happy to help. Dwayne Battles, how do you like the new fine finish low pressure tips? I started experimenting with them, what was it, about a year and a half ago, give or take. Very good results. The only problem is there are so many variables when spraying, it's hard to say this is good, this is bad, because when you're dealing with, spraying fine finishes and stuff, you have, number one, the product, different tips, different orifice size react to different stuff there. You have pressure in the machine. If you're working with an air-assisted airless, now you got air pressure. Now you got tip size. Then you have hand speed. Then you have depth of your hand to the finish like this. So what I try to do is when I find a setting that works generally for a lot of my coatings, I'll leave the air pressure where it is. I'll leave the standard line pressure where it is. I'll maintain a good distance with my hand and maintain a similar motion, and I'll lay out all my tips on a table, and I'll just start cycling through them to see what does what. And you'll find that yes, the fine finish low pressure tips, you can do it at a lower pressure. It took a little more dialing in, and I never say anything is good or bad because I want to give it its due time. But when somebody, I've been basically doing fine finishing with a standard Titan 440 sprayer, oil primers, and all sorts of oils and hybrid enamels with standard tips, standard sprayers in people's houses. and I haven't really had any problems. So then when you get an air-assisted airless and you get some low pressure tips, it's taken a little while for me to make sure I can do the same stuff, because you have to, you know, with the air-assisted airless machine, you actually have to move a little bit quicker, and when the spray or when the coating leaves the gun, it looks different, feels different, and leaves the gun at a different rate. So when you're laying it down, if you go at the same rate as an airless, you lay too much. It atomizes differently, and when it lays down, it coalesces more. Whereas an airless will kind of throw it against there, and you see some immediate coalescing. So it's sort of just a learning curve, and I'm going to give myself one more winter and see which one of these things works well. And I've had my air-assisted airless, you know, my Ferrari of sprayers, that nice Graco in there. I used it all winter for fine finishing, a little bit in the summer here for some stuff, but I still feel that I need another year or two to really like squeeze all the good juice out of that thing and learn everything I can from it. So fine finish. Apply one more time. You want to see me spray again? All right. Well, the wind's kicking up here, Juliano. I'm going to see if I can't put my paper down. Give me just a second here, would you? Safety first. All right, I'm gonna spray this for you guys, and I'm out of here. It's Friday. I gotta go check up on my crews, make sure they're not sleeping under trees. I'm gonna spend a little time with the family. So I'll do this little spray here, and then we'll bid adieu for the weekend. You can see that tiny bit of spit and drip right there. Whereas you get that nice clean finish down there. Yeah, it's a little more pronounced there. All right, folks, you guys have a good weekend. Juliano, you guys are very active down there in Brazil. Thank you so much for all the interaction. I get tons of feedback and questions from your fellow painters down there. So everybody have a good weekend. If you want to see me use any piece of tech, any special coating, if you want to see me do a particular project, hashtag it, Nick Paints It, and I will track it down for you, and I will do it live here. So everybody else, have a good weekend. We'll talk to you later.